Good evening. Welcome to the July 12th, 2021 meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission. If everyone would stand, Commissioner Craig Lynch will lead us in our prayer and our pledge. Craig.
You bow with me, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for all the blessings you've given us. We thank you for the rain. We thank you for the sunshine. We thank you for the abilities that we can come serve a fellow man and work for our county. We thank you for our county. We thank you for our nation. We thank you for all the protectors and armed forces we've had all over the years. Sometimes we seem to forget about those that we've just celebrated this past week for Independence Day, those that fought hard where we could have independence and where we could have a Declaration of Independence, and when we could have everything we got today and be able to stand in here tonight and without any fear from harm anyway. We just thank you for all that, and thank you for our country, and just be with us tonight, and let save us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Face the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Call a roll, please, Gail.
Charlotte P. Chip Pinion. Craig Lynch. David Jones. Jim Averwater. Lee Bogle. Marvin Whitworth. Mike Cush. Pettis Reed.
Here.
Rhonda Allen. Here. Jeff Phillips.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. This time we need to approve the minutes from our April 12th meeting. I'll call on our Vice Chair, Pettis Reed.
Mr. Chairman, I have read through those minutes and I have found nothing wrong with those, so I move to approve the April 12th minutes for the Commission.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from our April 12th meeting. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. And motion carries. No items withdrawn or deferred. We'll get right into our business. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight and apologize for the delay, but we're thankful that Charlotte's here. Good job, Charlotte. Thank you. A lot of our commissioners are, July is a big vacation month for county government, and a lot of our commissioners are on vacation, but we appreciate you guys for being here tonight. Thank you. Under new business, item 6, we have 3 items that are up for consideration of a rezoning tonight. And let me make a note that all of these items will go before the full Rutherford County Commission at the August 12th Commission meeting. This body recommends and makes really no decision. It's a recommending body to the full County Commission. But all of them will be heard at a public hearing before the Rutherford County Commission on August the 12th. Item 6A1, REZ 21-007, Huddleston Steel Engineering for George Lopez. Location is Old Nashville Highway. County Commission District is 19, and the Commissioner is Rob Key. Size of the site is approximately 12 acres to be rezoned. Tax map is 70. Existing zoning is CN Commercial Neighborhood and CG for Commercial General. Proposed zoning is a PUD for a soccer facility. Doug.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And good evening, Commissioners and everyone here tonight. The property that you're looking at probably looks familiar. This has been the subject of several rezoning requests over the last couple of years. The original request, as you recall, was for a portion of the property to be zoned to commercial neighborhood, with the remainder being zoned light industrial, which ended up being recommended to commercial general instead of light industrial. That's just in a way of a little bit of history for you. As Chairman Phillips stated, the applicant's proposing to rezone approximately 11 acres of the subject property to a planned unit development in order to construct an indoor-outdoor soccer complex. They made a similar request to the Board of Zoning Appeals at their February 10th, 2021 meeting. Although the indoor complex would be allowed by right in the commercial general zone, the outdoor fields did require special exception approval, which is what they were going for at that time. Following the public hearing on the proposed use, the application ended up being denied. You can see the minutes attached with your staff report from that meeting. The applicant, since that meeting, has shifted the use a little bit more to the northwest. The property is actually broken into several different 5 5-acre tracts. And instead of taking the 2 that they had, they actually took the one to the northwest along with one of the original ones that they were asking for. So it's actually shifted just a little bit to the northwest versus what they were asking for to the Board of Zoning Appeals back in February of this year. The applicant's pattern book is on your iPads, and the applicant's representative, Mr. Clyde Roundtree, is present to make a presentation on this, but I'll just go over some of the high points. The soccer club currently operates out of a structure at Oakland High School. The hours of operation will be 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. on weekends during the warmer months. Colder months would entail usage of the indoor facility only, but the operating hours would be the same. The size of the facility that they're proposing to build would be about 45,000 square feet. That's a little different than what's in your staff report. That's changed a little bit since we got the revisions to the pattern book that is on your iPads right now. There are 2 outdoor fields. One would be in front of the building. When you look at the concept plan that Mike has up there on the screen, and you can see one behind the building as well. The one behind the building is proposed to have lights at some point. The one in front, they're not proposing any lighting on that particular field. Access to the property would be from Old Nashville Highway. Of course, any new or modified egress points would need to be approved by the county's highway department, and also they'd have to submit a site plan showing that the site met county requirements. No traffic study has been done on this currently. That is something that we can require even prior to site plan, but you can see they are proposing a dust-free parking area of 92 spots with a grass overflow area of approximately 52 more. We've asked for some information on just the number of seats that would be available inside the facility and outside, and I think Mr. Roundtree is going to discuss that a little more when he comes up here. Let's see what else we got here. They would be required to install a Type 2 buffer adjacent to any residentially zoned property. This is a PUD, and it's surrounded primarily by commercial zoning. There is some residential zoning along Old Nashville Highway. Mike's going to turn that on. You can see that those portions there, that those weren't part of the original request, obviously, because they're separate pieces of property. They would have to have Type 2 buffers around those particular properties. Like I said, you're not required to have any buffering between commercially zoned properties, but when you look at the concept plan, again, I think that's something that Clyde's going to talk a little bit more about when he comes up here. And performance standards would apply to this as well, as far as noise, dust, etc. The pattern book does state that any amplified sound would be over by 9 p.m. The pattern book does say that that's not a frequent occurrence. We have asked them to reconsider that, since there's residential units so close by that was something that if they could do without, we'd rather just not see that. But with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have before the public hearing's opened.
Any questions for staff at this time? Applicant available? Applicant here?
Just go ahead and start hitting this.
Chairman Phillips, Commissioners, my name is Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel Engineering. I'm accompanied by Mr. Ben Livingston, who is the representative for the client, and I believe Jorge is here as well. I'm not sure, I haven't seen him here, but I believe he's in the back. Thank you, Jorge. Again, my name is Clyde Roundtree, Huddleston Steel Engineering, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present to you the soccer club located on Old Nashville Highway. As was mentioned, we originally took this project through to BZA just to get a special use exception for the property. After going through that process, one of the things that resonated with the BZA, that they were just not confident that if the soccer club was not successful, that it would turn into another use. And that's where we went into the plan development route, because we realized with a plan development, it provides the opportunity for assurances for those who are adjacent property owners, as well as the county, and knowing what that land will be used for. Mr. Lopez was more than willing to go through that process. He believes that this piece of property is really suitable for his business, and he's excited about the possibility. We'd like to thank Mr. Don Bruce, who's the owner of the property. He's been very flexible. As Doug mentioned, we originally had 2 parcels to the eastern portion of the property. We shifted to the western portion of the property. That allowed some better access to the property, further away from the adjacent residences, and it just worked out well, and it allowed us to get away from surrounding. There's a home that was purchased that the homeowner, I'm sure she's here, I'm not sure if Lori's here, but we've had several meetings with a homeowner. Our property originally wrapped around her piece of property, and at the time of her purchase, it was about simultaneous with the purchase of the property and when it was getting zoned commercial. So she bought her home not realizing that it was going to be commercial property around her. So she's been active in helping us try to understand her concerns, and we've been trying to work with her. But by shifting the property over, some of the burden that she was experiencing by enveloping her property is no longer an issue. There is a situation also that we found out that her particular septic field actually breaches into this particular piece of property, but by shifting it over, we were able to avoid any of her septic field as well. So that kind of explains why we shifted over and why we've decided to go plan development through this process. As Doug mentioned, Old Nashville Highway on the northern side is rapidly becoming more of a commercial development. You can see that from the zoning map. Those colors, the purple, the dark purple, the light pink, are all either industrial zone, light industrial zone, commercial services, commercial general, or commercial neighborhoods. So we're of the belief that everything on the north side of Old Nashville Highway is trending towards commercial development. Green light. Did it go green? I got it, Doug. There it goes. So these are some of the adjacent uses, just to list them. Basically on the southern portion of it's really the northern portion of the site, kind of off angle, but the CX, the railroad is there, the CSX railroad, and then on the other side of that is Northwest Broad Street. So on the back side is definitely more of an industrial commercial kind of component. There is a natural tree line that runs along the railroad, so we're not reaching into all of that. We'll leave some of those trees remaining. As far as down the street, there's Vulcan Industries, so there is a quarry right down the street, as well as a lot of the traffic associated with the quarry. They share Old Nashville Highway. They're being encouraged to go onto Northwest Broad. Adjacent to our property is the Buddhist temple. They'll be adjacent to us if we're approved. So part of our positioning with Mr. Lopez is that we feel like it is trending towards commercial. Mr. Bruce had his own commercial, so we feel like we're asking for an appropriate use for the property. Some of the adjacent uses, just so some of the commercial uses along Old Nashville Highway. Exhibit A is basically many warehouses that are along Old Nashville Highway. Exhibit B is the Vulcan entrance to Vulcan Materials. You can see their stockpile of asphalt there. Exhibit C is the homeowner we mentioned. That's her home, that's her driveway on the right side of her property. And then D is the adjacent property owner to the west of us. So we're basically sandwiching our property between those two homes, as was shown on the zoning map. Exhibit E is a picture of the Buddhist temple entrance. F is the home across the street. So there is a residential neighborhood directly across the street from our development. And then G is another commercial building, and then there's a brand new commercial building that was off the screen from where we designated all the photos. I'm not sure what the use is, but it's a really nice commercial building, but that's actually on the opposite side of Old Nashville Highway as you come down. So when we looked at it with Commissioner Key, we were kind of working through the process of how many commercial buildings, how many commercial developments are along the road, and kind of the impact that may have on traffic. We noticed that the battlefields have a large parking area with a visitor center. The Buddhist temple's on the same street. They have their own population. However, unique to this piece of property, as well as to our program on the property, we're not a day-to-day operation. This is not an overscaled operation. We feel like it's fitting on Old Nashville Highway. Mr. Livingston's here. He'll be coming up eventually because he's been managing the Oakland property where the club currently resides, and he knows all about the type of use they actually put on the property, so we're looking forward to hearing Ben explain that in more detail. From the site plan standpoint, as Doug mentioned, several things have occurred. Like I said, the driveway now is sandwiched between the properties. Before, it was basically running very, very close to the adjacent property. We lined it up with the street across from our development, so that's why it's still justified towards the left side, but it is in a wide green space, as well as the signs located in that green space. As far as the overall development, Doug had mentioned there's an indoor facility. We justified that against the property line where the temple is, trusting that will provide some buffering from the parking. So any light that may be associated with the parking or lights that are associated with parking lots could be buffered from the temple with the building itself. As far as the front field, that field, a lot of the soccer, basically they flip the field and kids can play on the smaller sides, and they have a lot of different ways of playing soccer on an existing field. So the 2 fields are outdoor fields with 1 indoor facility field. Now, the field in the back, as Doug mentioned, if it prospers at this location, our owner would like to have the ability at this point to have lights approved for the rear field. Now, the reason for the rear field is they don't have that much demand for nighttime soccer, but also to pull it as far away as possible from the existing residences that are along Old Nashville Highway. The parking lot design, basically the dust-free parking is closest to the building, but also furthest away from the residences. And there is opportunities where they need overflow parking. We have 92 spaces that are dust-free, and then another 52 spaces for overflow. As we hear Mr. Livingston's presentation, that doesn't happen. He actually has a number that he went out to Oakland to look at exactly what capacity on their max event that they've had and how much parking they've actually used. So with that in mind, Ben will have a chance to share that. The last slide just shows the facility itself. Now, this is we call it a club because this is a group of people who play soccer together. Their families play soccer together. This is not an open for public kind of drive-up kind of facility. Everyone who uses the facility is associated with the facility. It's a pay-per-use type of facility. It's not a general play where just come on, pick up a ball, and let's go. It will be a fenced-in facility. For someone to use it, they have to coordinate with the ownership of the property. So we want to make sure that it's understood that this is not a public piece of property. This is a private soccer club that's an invite-only, day-use pay kind of facility. Part of the concern was with any kind of park, what kind of situations will occur, will riffraff come in, all those kind of questions. This will be a gated facility, only open during times where owners are present. It'll be monitored. It'll be fenced. So all those safeguards are designed to protect the investment of the club's soccer fields, but also to give maximum opportunity to manage the property well. So with that, Ben, if you'd like to come up and share about the actual use of the property, we'd appreciate that.
Clyde, before you leave, could you talk a little bit about the water and the fire protection situation out there we just found out about?
Yes, we did find out that one of the questions came up was capacity for the water flow of the building, whether we'd have to have a sprinkled building or not, and we'll have to have a sprinkler-based building based on the flows that are available to us. We feel like the fire flow will be sufficient, but it will be a sprinkler building. That we just found that out. And as far as, Doug, let me just address, as far as seating, Ben can talk more if he would in terms of what you've experienced from the crowds. We realize that one of the challenges when you have 94 spaces, you're assuming all those spaces are full. But the way this club has worked in the past is they roll over. Games are played. Once those games are played, people leave. Another group comes in. Very typical to just field play. So it's not like they come and they stay all day. The parking lot's constantly revolving, and Ben said at any certain time he's never seen more than 60 cars kind of associated with that, but he'll bring more detail to that. And as far as seating, Ben, if you could elaborate on that, I'd appreciate that, because I really don't know exactly how many spectators are involved with this type of club. So with that in mind, Ben, come on up.
And while he's coming up, I'll just add a little bit to what Clyde was talking about as far as the water is concerned. There's a 6-inch water line along Old Nashville Highway. In order to meet the fire demands, they got with the fire chief and went back and forth as far as what was required for that. The line will not be able to support the fire flows for hydrants at that location, which is the need for the sprinkler. Now, understanding that also that it looks at this point that they would probably have enough for sprinklers. However, that has not been officially determined at this point. Right. The information that was sent to them did not include sprinklers, so CUD has not made an official determination that sprinklers will be able to be supported on that line. So I just want to make sure that was clear to everybody.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Ben Livingston. I have managed the Oakland High School indoor facility for 8 years. And there's probably, although I'm not an expert on soccer by any stretch of the imagination, I definitely know how this group operates and how their flow is, and I do want everybody to understand that this isn't a traditional business in the sense of a traditional business, and that even though most businesses Monday through Friday are open from 9 to whatever, 8 or 9 at night, these guys, this doesn't happen that way. At Oakland, during the late spring, summer, fall, we had no usage of the building at all, because most of the kids, the young kids anyhow, They're playing for the high school teams or their middle school teams, and so they don't get involved in the indoor facility like other kids would. So, but on the weekends, it would get used by the guys that are in the club, and I call them a club because it's really an association of different teams, and they all know each other, and they get together and they play, and they do have a flow. They'll schedule a time where they're going to play two teams, and those guys will show up and they'll play, and then they leave. And these, of course, these are adults. They've got children, they've got families, they've got jobs, and so the hours are very limited, especially during the summertime and the warm months. The maximum usage happens during the winter, and I say from after Thanksgiving through the end of February, maybe the first few days of March, and that's when you get the maximum usage. And on a Monday through Friday, it would only get used after 5 o'clock. From 8 o'clock till 5 in the afternoon, there is literally nobody there. And it would be that way most of the time, except the weekends. And then on the weekends, and only during that time frame from Thanksgiving through the 1st of March, they do the indoor leagues. And then that's also the time when the high school kids aren't playing soccer, and the coaches typically allow them to get involved with teams, and they'll play 7-on-7 teams, and because the indoor facility, they'll split it in half, and they'll play 2 fields on the indoor facility. And so you've got teams that show up, they play, and they leave. Now the children, the young kids, they tend to bring more crowd because mom and dad will come. Maybe every now and then grandma and grandpa will come to watch their young kids play. As it gets into the middle of the afternoon, you get into the high school age kids, and you get less of a crowd, and then after 3 or 4 in the afternoon, it turns into the adults. And then you don't have much of a crowd at all. And that's the flow. That's the way it works. There's never an accumulation because there's always people coming and going. And I did go by Oakland, and I have many memories of exactly how filled that parking lot was. And I went and counted the spaces at Oakland, and there was 80 spaces that I felt like was a safe number, the maximum that I ever saw it in 8 years. And this indoor facility is going to be similar to Oakland's. There's not a lot of places for people to sit. We had 3 little 4-level stacked bleacher sets, and they got full routinely, but it was always Saturday morning between 8 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when it got full. The rest of the time it never happened, and during the week it never happened. It's not a facility, and the way these guys work and the groups and that play, it's not open. They have to schedule their time with the owner. They'll pay for their time to come play. And when there's nobody there, the gates will be locked. And then if somebody, has a scheduled time to play at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, then somebody will come there and they'll open it up for them. So I know probably everybody has a lot of visions that it's going to be you think about a soccer complex and you think about indoor soccer games or whatever, and you think there's going to be this big crowd of 400 or 500 people and you're going to have hundreds of cars. That doesn't happen with this. It's just not that kind of business. And this isn't a traditional business in that he's looking to really make money. This is a club. This fella is fortunate enough to be able to be able to put together a facility like this for their group so that they can have a place to play. And then also at the same time, it'll provide a place for our local group, or some of our local kids and teams, to have a place to additionally practice indoors, because at Oakland, we were routinely always booked up. We could never have enough time indoors. Now, of course, I know out at Siegel Park, I think they're going to be building an indoor facility out there too. So ultimately, there may not be as much demand for Oakland, and there may not be as much demand for Jorge's facility as well on Old Nashville Highway. But at the end of the day, that's not what he's going into business for. He's going into business with this so that his group and his guys have a place to play and have a place to do their training and whatever they do, because they enjoy playing soccer. and it's what they do. But during the week, these guys have jobs, they have families, and so they're not out there at 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And when they're done working at 5 o'clock on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, the last thing they're probably going to do is go out and organize a soccer game and play on a Friday night. So it's really a Saturday, Sunday type of facility. And even Saturdays and Sundays won't be very intense, except from, like I said, after Thanksgiving till about the 1st of March. And I mean, that's just how it operates. I mean, and I'm not telling you what I think you want to hear. That's just what I experienced over 8 years. That's just the nature of it. And so, I mean, if somebody's got some specific questions, I mean, I'm certainly glad to answer them for you. Clyde, was there anything else that I need to address?
Mr. Chairman, I have some questions.
Rhonda.
Have you had any conversations with the folks at the temple in order to minimize your impact on them? Because I know you said weekend is your play and weekend is also their worship time.
Yeah, we haven't. However, to answer that point, yeah, we are sensitive to that, and that we know when they're having their events, we don't want to have our events because we're not going to double up on it. And so we are going to talk to them to make sure that anytime they're doing something, we're not going to be doing it. Now that much we have already planned on the front side, and that's part of our program that we're going to do, and I have no problem, you know, them if they need to put that in writing somewhere so that somebody's comfortable with it. There's not a problem in doing that because we fully plan on doing that.
And then I know you don't have a lot of road frontage there, so there may not be the opportunity for turn lanes, but I travel Old Nashville Highway a lot, and so I know the impact that just anybody turning off, you know, will have there. So have you had any conversations with your engineer about trying to plan for the traffic that's going to try to be turning into this facility and minimizing that impact on that road?
We did talk about it, and I don't know, honestly, we didn't really, I mean, we don't mind to do it if we need to do it, okay? At the end of the day, the question, the real thing is we don't really particularly think what needs to be done because of the flow during the week, which is when you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and that's when you get your most intense traffic flow on Old Nashville Highway, if I understand that correctly. That's when we'll have our least traffic impact. The greatest impact is always going to be during the wintertime from Saturday morning at 8 o'clock till 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And the way that it kind of flows during a game, you know, these games generally start every hour on the hour. And if you've got 2 teams playing and there's, you know, 10 kids on each team, you've got maybe 40 kids coming, and you might have a maximum of 30, 40, 50 cars, but they'll come and then they'll flow out and others will come in, and so you don't get this accumulation of traffic. And so
I'm a parent in that line, however. When you have 40 kids at one, or 40 cars at one time, and 40 cars at one time coming out, you know, yes, it may be on weekends, but when you have, it's all at once. You have people coming in all at once and people coming out all at once. I mean, traffic on Old Nashville Highway, I think a turn lane would be a good idea.
Well, it's something, Clyde, if it's something that's feasible, I'll let you go talk to that because that's not my area of expertise. So
Before we continue, I did have one other question just for you. Are the lights a deal breaker for you? Do you have the lights on that lit field?
I don't think it would be. The lights, and I'll speak to the lights. I'm glad you brought that up because when you hear lights, you're thinking of the stadium lights like at one of the high schools, Oakland. The lights that they were considering, if you go to the fields behind SportsCom, you know, the old soccer fields and the old football fields where they used to play years ago, if you go back there and look at those lights, that's what they were talking about because they can't afford to put the big stadium lights. So it would never be anything like that because those lights are just way too expensive. But I think at the end of the day, if they didn't want even those abbreviated lights, as I would kind of consider them, I don't think it would be a deal breaker. I mean, I really don't. I mean, because most of their stuff's going to be done during the days and Saturdays and Sundays, and by the time they get to the end of the day, most of those guys are going to be like the rest of us, going to be too tuckered out to stay and play till 7 or 8.
Well, and that was one of the reasons that I asked, because I know your hours were extended on the weekends, it looked like, and that was one of my concerns for the impact on the neighbors. And so if you don't have lights, that's going to kind of naturally take care of itself.
I don't think that would be a big deal. I mean, at the end of the day, these guys want a place to play. They're trying to be good neighbors. I mean, they bent over backwards trying to change everything to make it work. It's a great location for what they're wanting to do, and if they have to drop that, I think they drop it. They're not trying to act like this is their world and everybody else has just got to live in it. So I think that would be something that they would do. I don't think there'd be any problem with that at all.
As far as the turn lanes, the only thing we've run into is just kind of comparing it to the temple and also to the parking lot for the battlefield. There are large parking lots where lots of people gather, but we haven't heard of any issue with those situations. And like Ben is saying, because it is such a diluted, you would think that, okay, a game starts at 10 o'clock, so everyone's going to show up at 10 o'clock. Some people, there'll be about a 15-minute window where 40 cars will move into a space. So at this point, we just don't think it's a substantial enough amount of traffic to merit that, the turn lane. But that's based on tertiary understanding of where we're at. Mike and Bill Huddleston had a conversation today, and really the benchmark is about 100 cars in an hour span during peak time. And as Ben is mentioning, this operation is not really doing anything during peak time. The temple, I reached out to them. I was not able to make communication. I've called and he's called, but we haven't connected with each other. I did want to make sure that our activity as far as the parking was as far away as possible. Even with the fields on the back, the lights on the backfield, that was really to respect as much of the adjacent relationships as possible. So that's where we're at with that as far as the turn lanes are concerned right now.
Clyde, how much road frontage is there, and how much road frontage would you need in order to stack vehicles?
I don't know exactly. I'd say there's, based on the scale of this drawing, I would say approximately probably between 175 and 200 feet of actual green space frontage. As far as, we would have the opportunity to double stack our lane, so if people are going right, there wouldn't be a bottleneck on this side. But it's basically, and Ben, do you have any sense of where the traffic would be coming from? Primarily, would they be coming from Murfreesboro, or would they come in every direction?
Most of it on Saturday mornings, most of it's going to be coming access to Old Nashville Highway from 840 is going to, flip a coin. There's going to be some coming from Murfreesboro, and since you've got so much off of 840 and up off of Florence Road and stuff, I tend to think you're going to get some flow from that direction too, and it's kind of, that's a good question.
So I would just say that if we feel like it is merited, I think our owner would be willing to do that. But we at this point, we just don't think the heavy use is going to be there to warrant the turn lanes. At least from the history that Ben's had with them, it's not that kind of operation where it just bottlenecks like that.
Other questions of the applicant at this time? Thank you.
Thank you.
We're ready for our public hearing, and I'll declare the public hearing open for item number REZ 21-007, Huddleston Steel Engineering for, did I say that right, George, or is it Jorge Lopez? Anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request, please come forward. Let me just send out a reminder for everyone. There's a lot of folks here tonight. I have no idea what you guys are here for, but our guidelines are 3 minutes.
Hello. I'm Laurie Eastep. I'm the home, 5040 Old Nashville. So originally it was going to surround my property. Now it's just going to surround half of my property. And Ben and Clyde have reached out and talked to me and tried to appease, I guess is the word, make me feel comfortable with their plan. Of course, I just don't feel like it's the right purpose. It was rezoned commercial general for a reason. I just, of course, have hesitancy about the traffic, the noise, the light, and there are things that they have done, without a doubt, agreed to buffering, extra buffering, and that type of thing, but nobody can say for sure exactly what the traffic's going to be like. There is no shoulder on Old Nashville Highway. It is hard enough to pull out of my driveway right now, and the driveway I use primarily, I mean, I come in one side because of the traffic and go out the side that will be right next to where their road is, because I can see there are dips in Old Nashville, and when you're pulling out of my driveway, if somebody is in one of those dips low, I can't see them. And so that's my biggest concern, and having, you know, the stacking up of traffic. I have a 70-year-old mother that lives with me. I want to make sure an ambulance or a fire truck or anything else can get in my driveway if it needs to. And the other concern is the hours. You know, that means there's going to be a sporting event literally out my back door every weekend in the evening. Whether it's indoors or outdoors, there's still going to be people there during the week. And as Clyde said, it's going to be not all at once, it's going to be a continuous thing throughout the day. So that kind of bothers me. Yep, that's my place. So if you have any questions, I'll take them. Otherwise, that's pretty much how I feel.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? For your name.
My name is Matt Ward. I own the house directly across from this proposal. It's right on the corner of Reynolds Drive and Old Nashville Highway. My main concern is the same one that's been mentioned before, of traffic. As said, there is no shoulder on either side of the road, and there's already a problem with people trying to get out of Reynolds Drive when the traffic is heavy and somebody's trying to turn in. A large truck or a car with a trailer cannot turn into Reynolds Drive from Old Nashville Highway unless there is nothing in either lane on Reynolds Drive. They just can't make that sharp of a turn. So when there are people trying to get out of Reynolds Drive and a large thing trying to get in, that large thing is just going to stand there, backing up however many other cars come along until everybody on Reynolds Drive has exited and he's got a space to get in there. So it's already a problem, and this will really compound it. As you stated, the problem is not so much how much traffic, it's when they come. They all come at the same time. There may be, well, I'm told there's going to be 144 parking places, and I don't know that developers spend money without the feeling of the need. So I think they may be underestimating when they say that there may only be 80 at a maximum cars in there at one time. And even if there is, again, the problem is they all come at the same time. I think this is a state highway, isn't it? So I think the state has to be involved in putting in a turn lane, but my objection is that this should not be approved until a turn lane is approved and scheduled to be done before the soccer games begin.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name's Philip Hearn. I live at the 5000 area just across the road from this new facility wanting to come in. I've spoke about it several times over the last couple of years. Traffic is a concern. Mr. Ward did bring up a good point. That point has really gotten a lot worse since you've already approved the amount of commercial businesses to come in the area there. Each one of these businesses y'all are approved already in the past take weekly reloads of 18-wheelers, bringing product in or whatever. With this soccer complex coming in right there at that intersection, plus having the other 4 driveways right there within the 500 feet. The 500 feet also is what it takes to get a notice to come here and talk. There's probably 200 families that don't get this, but are going to be impacted severely by everything that goes on here. But they aren't given the right to come. Well, they are given the right. They're given the right through a little piece of plastic that's put in the ditch so that they'll know something's happening. I was fortunate enough to get it. I was in the 500 feet. I've seen traffic already back up from the Reynolds entrance to my property, 18-wheelers, everything. And the problem is they're trying to turn into the neighborhood with a trailer, a box truck or something, and they have to stop all that traffic right there until those 6 cars come out so he has enough room to get in there. So we've got a lot of risky things that are happening through all these approvals coming in here with no road work being done. I think if we do this, we're looking at a similar problem that we had down at Florence and the old Nashville Highway before somebody stepped in and put a actual red light there. Lighting is going to be an issue. Lighting's already an issue with the Buddhist temple. I don't know if you ever go in my neighborhood much, but if you go through my area at night and you come across the 840 bridge, you're going to get hit with some LED lights that are going to really affect you. These things don't work on a timer. They just come straight on every night. They're there every night. No problem, but they are focused out toward the road. This is going on right beside the property that we're talking about today. They've got to have some lights there. They've got to have this parking lot lit up. It's going to be an issue. It may not be the biggest issue for me, but it is going to be an issue for some of them that are closer. One other issue I want to bring up is you're letting these people, the property right beside them, I think Mr. Clyde worked it as well. They've gone in and started clearing that property out. So now what we have now is we have the railroad track. We had probably 50 feet of trees growing up as a buffer, a natural buffer. We're losing all of that. It sounds like we're going to be losing the majority of that now just to buffer the houses. I don't know if that's going to be enough to keep what's going to happen down the road as things develop on this property if they get approved. And I do appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
My name is William Turner. I live across the street from Lori. everything that they've said is true. We do have a traffic problem. We have a traffic problem right now. It's not going to be any easier for her to get out of her driveway or me to get out of my driveway with all this commercial property coming in, or commercial businesses coming in. And I know that Murfreesboro is going to have to grow, but it's not easy to get in and out. It's a major traffic problem at 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning. It's tough getting in and out of your driveway, even though I'm retired, so I don't have to. But in the afternoons, it's the same way. It's backing up then, and I'm sure it's going to back up even more. And on the weekends, it's backing up. So it's a major traffic problem. I won't hold you long, but I agree with everything that they've said.
Turner.
Good afternoon. I'm Don Bruce. I'm the owner of that property, and the major portion of it is zoned commercial neighborhood. That means anything that fits in a commercial neighborhood does not have to come up here for anything except a site plan. Now, some of the things that will go in there, I mean, that is zoned for it already, is townhouses, single-family detached, duplexes, multifamily, bed and breakfast, community assemblies, funeral homes, animal care, 5,000 square foot convenience stores, tobacco wholesale. I mentioned agriculture sales and service. The zoning is already in place for that. No zoning has to be redone for any of those. All it has to have is a site plan. Now, the buyers, prospective buyers, have been working on this for about a year, and if they tell me that they're through with it, we have backup buyers for it, and they will not be back up here begging for an approval for something. And I can pretty well tell you what's going to go in there is going to be apartments, and the soil is there. We've got area for it. So that's all I've got to say.
Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request? Commissioner Key.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Rod Key. I'm the commissioner of that District 19. It seems that we have a conundrum. A lot of questions are being asked, but my goal here tonight is to do the will of the commission. The commission has voted 2 years ago, June 19th of 2019, to make this property commercial. I don't know why I wasn't here then, but I do know that that was the will of the commission. You and the full commission, okay? What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, we've had meetings. I myself have sat through many hours of meetings with the potential buyer, with the engineer, with the neighbors, and everybody makes great points. Now, let me just remind you of a couple of things. Old Nashville Highway is destined or doomed for growth. That's going to happen. Right now, it is set up where the battlefield has over 300,000 visits per car. These are people that come in the cars, but 300,000 visitors every year. Okay, so what we're talking about is a drop in the bucket. One side says that the National Battlefield doesn't have a turning lane. Okay, they have a lot less parking also than what's being talked about here. They do have a pedestrian light so they can cross back and forth. They make it work. They make it work. So my question is, can we make this work? I've had a realtor call me within the last 2 months wanting to know if I would support a towing company on this very same lot. A towing company, and then they would ask for approval to store cars there and vehicles there that aren't running. This property is zoned, unfortunately, the resident there bought this property about 2 months after it was zoned commercial around her. Perhaps I would be livid. Perhaps I would. I don't know. I can't speculate. But that's not a good position to be in. But we are in this position right now, and we've got to make a decision. We've got to move forward. So, based on the prior commission's wishes, and that it is commercial property, knowing that there could be many things going this, I've met with the potential buyer. He has done his due diligence by coming up with a PUD, answering specific questions, making specific alterations to the best of his ability. Some things he can't speculate. We can't even ask the right questions. But my role here has to be, can we live as good neighbors? Can we make this right and do well and it be safe? All right? And can we make good neighbors going forward? So with that, I recommend the approval of this and it go to full commission vote.
Thank you, Commissioner Key. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request? Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners.
Doug, is this contingent upon CUD answering the question that CUD has? Is that going to hang us up for a while or what?
Well, I mean, you could make it contingent upon it. You don't have to have it in order for them for you to make a recommendation. Now, quite frankly, they're going to have to know one way or the other if first of all, can it support the sprinklers? And if it can, how much is that going to cost? There's always the option of extending the water line or, upgrading the water line, which would probably be more costly. But they're going to have to know that information. It could be that they get the property rezoned, find out they can't afford a sprinkler system, and then nothing happens. It just sits there with the approval, if this is approved. Now, as a planned development, even if this is approved and they walk away from it, the current applicants, the zoning stays put at that point. They wouldn't be, if somebody else wouldn't be able to come in and say, oh, look, a commercially zoned piece of property there, we're going to do soccer fields here. We don't want to do that. We want to do something different. They'd have to come back through this process. So, but I mean, that's a pretty important piece of information that they're going to need to know for just to get their plans moving forward.
Mr. Chairman, concerning the lighting on those fields right there, Mr. DeMasi, will that be within the plat there, the concerning what lights will be approved? A lighting diagram of...
Well, they would have to abide by our standards in our zoning ordinance. If they may not be able to tell us right now what kind of lights they are, but they would have to meet the standards in the zoning ordinance for performance standards, yes.
It won't affect...
It'd be, I think it's a half a foot candle at the property lines. All property lines is what they'd be looking at.
Mr. Chairman, I know we've heard quite a bit from the those that live there about the traffic flow, and any of us that's been down Old Nashville Highway, we know that. We've been down there, we've seen this traffic. I, for one, would like to see a turn lane. I know they said that if they think that's what they need, that's probably what we're going to, because even, I know there's been mentioned the fact that the battlefield doesn't have one or whatever, but I know soccer, and you're going to have a lot of high school drivers coming in there too. But I just feel like for this particular situation right here, if that is a past, that I think a turn lane in particular might be the safest way for that facility to operate. So for me to vote here, I would almost have to see a turn lane approved with it.
Mr. Chairman, I would like Doug and Mike's thoughts on this as well, but this is my initial thought. I would actually like to see a revision to the pattern book that would include a turn lane, some kind of a commitment policy to the Buddhist temple on what their practice is going to be about how they're going to utilize this space during their worship times, and then also no lights on that field. So I think it would be appropriate for us to even defer until those changes can be made to the pattern book, and then come back and let us review it then.
Is that a motion to defer?
As long as Doug and Mike don't think that's inappropriate, then yes, it's a motion to defer.
If I might add, the battlefield is working on a plan to make improvements on Old Nashville Highway in front of the battlefield. So I don't know when those will happen, but that's having to go through the federal budget and filter down. So.
Is there a second to the motion to defer? Motion fails for lack of second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to defer. Doug, any input?
Just to say that based on our zoning requirements, you are allowed to defer up to 60 days. So this would be from initial consideration, which would be tonight. So 60 days from tonight. So that is appropriate.
Would the defer give an opportunity to get some decision that relates to the sprinkler system?
I think a lot of that's going to be on the applicant as far as how fast can they get some information into CUD.
We have a motion and a second to defer. Item number REZ 21-007, Huddleston Steel Engineering for George Lopez. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to defer, please say aye. Aye. Opposition? The motion to defer carries. Thank you. Item 6A2, REZ 21-008, Dan Bobo for Old South Properties Incorporated. Location is Stewart Creek Road. Commission district is 9. County Commissioner is Joe Gurley. Size of the site is approximately 161 acres. Tax map is 72. Existing zoning is RM for residential medium density. Proposed zoning is a PUD, planned unit development for a residential subdivision. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I will say before starting my presentation on this that several of the numbers that you'll see in your staff report are going to differ from the numbers I give you. Again, this was due to the fact that the initial numbers that we had were from the original pattern book. We didn't get the revisions until after this staff report went out, so just a little FYI on that. With that being said, what the applicant is proposing to develop is a 159-lot residential subdivision, Brewer Point, on this property. Houses will range from 2,000 square feet minimum for the medium lots, which are a minimum of 10,000, I think 10,500 square feet, and then 2,700 square feet for the what they're calling the large lots, which are 15,000 square feet. There will be, as I stated, 2 different lot sizes: the large lots and which are the 15,000, and the medium. Total between the two, and you can see this in your pattern book, and it looks like Mike's got at least the concept plan up there, 59 large lots, and again, those are at least 15,000 square feet in size. And for the board's information and for those who are here, 15,000 square feet is the minimum lot size of the current zoning, which is RM, residential medium density. The others 114, the other 100, excuse me, medium lots, again, the minimum of a little over 10,000 square feet. Those are 100 of those, and those are minimum, again, of 10,000 square feet, which is, again, roughly a quarter of an acre, just a shade under a quarter of an acre. Looking at the site plan, that concept plan that Mike had up and the pattern book, you'll see that about 66 acres on the eastern side of the property are being set aside as natural area due to the steep slopes of the property. They're also proposing some amenity areas and stormwater ponds throughout the development. And again, I will call your attention to the pattern book. Access to the property is going to be from two access points onto Stewart Creek Road. You can see there's one, they're both kind of in the middle, so to speak. One right there, and then the other one right there in the curve of the road. Traffic has been a big concern of people who have called in and have discussed this with us. It was a big concern during the neighborhood meeting as well. The applicant is proposing on the one curve there on the property, I guess that's would be the westernmost curve in the road, and Mike is showing right there, they are proposing to soften that curve, as well as putting turn lanes at, I guess would be the main entrance to the development, which Mike is highlighting right there, to help with the traffic in that particular part of Stewart Creek Road. Buffering and screening is not required by the zoning ordinance between single-family developments. I believe that Mr. Roundtree, when he makes his presentation here briefly, I believe the revised pattern book does call for a small buffer along that, along one of the sides, I believe. But again, I'll let him discuss that in a little more detail. Performance standards would not necessarily apply to this because this is a residential development, not a commercial one. With that being said, again, this particular application does propose to leave about 38% of this property undeveloped. 40% or so of the lot, maybe a little bit around that area, are going to be the large lots, which are, again, 15,000 square feet, which is the minimum required in the current zoning. The remainder are just going to be a shade less than that. That's kind of concludes my comments on this, Mr. Chairman. I'm available for questions, as is Mike. They did complete a traffic study on this. Of course, we can talk more about that as time goes on. Again, this is kind of what they're over the overview of what they're proposing. Again, turn lanes, better signage, and kind of softening that one curve in the road. So with that, I know Mr. Roundtree, he's also representing this particular application, and I believe he has a presentation to make as well. So I'll be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Good. Mike, you have anything?
No, Doug pretty much covered it. When we met with the design team, we told them, we said we've got some areas that we'd like them to look at, and they've looked at each one. The traffic study, even though it didn't say it needed a turn lane on the westernmost entrance, they're proposing to add one at that location. So you would have left turn lanes for the development, but also to Altoga Court, if I'm saying that correctly. Only other thing that I would point out is, and I hope my computer doesn't lock up, it's been kind of tricky tonight, is there are a couple lots, cursor's showing up on the screen or not. Let me see if I can find a better one. Okay. Just a little bit east of the westernmost entrance, it looks like they've got a couple lots fronting Stewart's Creek Road, and anytime we can eliminate potential connection points is a good thing. So I would ask if they could maybe move those to the inside of the development, maybe close to this pond and green space area, kind of moving those off the main thoroughfare out there. And then also, again, I hope my computer doesn't lock up. We would like to have another connection. There's, on Pembroke Farms, there's a road connection here that was brought to the south called Royal Palm Drive. It doesn't have to line up exactly with that, but if this property in between were ever to develop, it's always a good idea to get the traffic to disperse and not go out onto the main arterial. So that would be another thing that I would recommend. But all in all, with the large lots up front, and the layout, the preserving the steep areas on the eastern end, and the step field will pretty much stay a field from here on out once the step system is constructed. We will see a preliminary plan, we'll see construction drawings, so there's a lot of steps involved after, if and when it does prove to do this body.
Any questions for staff at this time? The applicant here.
Chairman Phillips, Commissioners, my name is Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel Engineering. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present to you Brewer Point Subdivision. As Mike has mentioned, there's been several generations of this master plan already, and we've had some active involvement from the neighbors, and we've had a neighborhood meeting, so we did our best to respond with this new revised pattern book, but I'm sure the neighbors are here to help us get some direction there. With that in mind, I'm accompanied by Steve Steele. He's the engineer on the project, and also Mr. Dan Bobo, representing Old South Homes, is here as well. Brewer Point Subdivision, we all know that as the development trends are occurring in Rutherford County, 15,000 square foot lots are becoming an anomaly. 10,000 square foot lots become an anomaly. A lot of lots are going towards 6,000 square feet, more density just for the overall development cost. So we represent this project proudly because we feel like this is a development that is sensitive to the surrounding neighbors in terms of it is in the country, it's in a rural area. However, the fact that the step system, in a sense, forces a development community to have green space associated with this project, again, it's not usable green space, but it's green space. As a designer, I feel really good that when they look out their front doors and when they come off their main roads into this area, they're pretty much going to see what they've seen for many, many years. To accent the step field, it's required that there's fencing around the step field. So we're proposing a decorative split rail fence that would be around the perimeter of the step field. So that's, again, for an aesthetic value, but it's also a requirement that CUD has for those step fields. As far as the overall density, this is a 1 unit per acre density. That's unheard of in these days. Some of that's due to the topography of the site, but the fact of the matter is it's there. So we're excited about that. 159 homes is what we're proposing. Again, the larger lots are 15,000 square feet, the smaller lots are 10,000 square feet.
Sorry, jumping ahead.
That's fine. This is the initial slide. This is one of the larger homes. As Doug mentioned, on the larger lots that are the 15,000 square foot lots, they're 100 feet wide, 150 foot deep, and the minimum size of the home is 2,700 square feet. The comparable street value for that home is somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000. Just so the commissioners can see this, right now the lot is currently very pastoral. As was mentioned, there's a really sharp bend on Stewart's Creek Road. That bend will be relaxed, so it's much more of a fluid traffic flow. But it's primarily pasture. There's a steep rise in the back portion, the eastern portion of the property. That'll remain undeveloped, but it's also part of our active open space that'll be utilized by the development. Around the corner, there are some new homes being constructed. Our homes, the one on the bottom right, labeled D, our homes on the larger lots will be somewhat comparable to this. This just shows you the nature of Stewart Creek Road around our location, and then some of the adjacent neighbors' homes on the lower slides. Overall, the development has the larger homes at the front entrance, as we mentioned, multiple green spaces throughout the development, an amenity center within the development. The step field will provide green space, 66 acres preserved for natural space. So we're developing the prime area in the center of the property. About 60 to 70 acres in the center will be developed. In response to, I just want to show you this slide because this was important. We know that the county's under some pressure. We had a meeting involving planned developments in terms of lot sizes, lot widths, and Mr. Bobo was more than willing to work with us on trying to make the lots as wide as we could within reason. So they went from 60 feet to 75 feet, which that makes CD happy as well. But we made the lots wider. We made the lots deeper. What we're finding is that the shallower lots in a lot of these developments really provide no backyard for a lot of the residents in the new developments. So we're being encouraged as a development community to go ahead and make the lots deeper. Old South has responded with a willingness to do that. So when you look at the smaller lots, we're talking 75 feet by about 140. When you look at the larger lots, they're 150 feet deep with 100 foot wide. So these are large lots. All things considered in today's economy, these are actually large lots. It'll have a nice entrance that'll identify Brewer Point off of Stewart's Creek Road. And then, as we're seeing with all of our developments, I'm not sure where that went, but green space is a requirement, amenity centers are a requirement. This will have a playground as well as a pavilion. So we feel like we're meeting the needs of the neighbors, as well as there's multiple places where green spaces will be kind of leveraged with drainage as well. A lot of the neighbors had concern over drainage. Mr. Steve Steele is here to talk about the drainage component as well as the traffic component. But in response to the neighbors' concerns, we reduced the quantity of homes so far as a willingness to show a gesture that we are willing to back down the density even though we're less than 1 unit per acre. We're also willing to increase the size. Originally we had 7,500 square foot lots as our smaller lots. We went up to 10,500 square feet as our smaller lots in response to the neighbors' concerns. And we feel like at this point we've made concessions to try to make this development as palatable as possible for the adjacent community, realizing that growth is growth. And most people would rather see a pasture than they would a subdivision. But we do feel like what we're proposing is comparable, if not to at least the standard of the homes adjacent to it. We feel like there'll be no impact negatively on property value with the adjacent homeowners. And as traffic is concerned, we've added the turn lanes that'll help keep the flow on Stewart's Creek fluid. But with that in mind, I'm talking a little bit out of my turn. Steve, if you can come up and kind of walk through the traffic component and the drainage component, I'd appreciate your time.
While Steve's coming up, could you address parking, the HOA restrictions as far as parking, street parking, that kind of thing?
Yes, sir. We have 35-foot setbacks on the lots, so that'll provide for a 2-car garage with ample parking for 4 cars. We did add that diagram to the large lot and the small lot, so all the lots will accommodate at least 4 cars in the front of the house, so we don't think on-street parking will be any concern.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I'm Steve Steele with Huddleston Steel Engineering. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. I know we have a lot of people here that want to speak too, so I'll try to keep my comments short and sweet, if you will. As far as traffic, our traffic study was done by Bill Huddleston. Bill has a master's degree in transportation engineering from Vanderbilt University, done many traffic studies in this county over many years, and our developer has committed to adopting all of the recommendations that were in the traffic study. In addition, as it was mentioned, even though it wasn't a recommendation of the traffic study, there had been talk of a turn lane, needing turn lanes, and our developer, Old South Development, has committed to doing that. So that's kind of the overview of that. Of course, drainage is always much more complicated. It's very site-specific, and this site is no different than any other. Generally, the east or the right, as you look at the picture up there, is a wooded hillside. And that property is really steep, and that's why that's being left as a natural area. There's quite a bit of drainage that comes off that hill, and it's moving to the west, which is to the left. And what our intention is to capture this off-site drainage and to route it around our property so that we will separate the natural drainage that's above us from our developed drainage within our site. Now, within our site, we are held responsible by the subdivision regulations and the zoning ordinance to make sure that we don't release stormwater in a greater rate than what it hits us today. So what we'll do is we will detain our stormwater on site and release it so that the post-development runoff, the runoff from us after we're done, is no greater than the runoff is today before we step on site. We have about, I believe, 4 areas identified for detention ponds. That's where the property naturally drains today. It's kind of draining from the right-hand green space. I'll point up here to the, that's a good exhibit, from the right-hand green space, maybe toward the left. You'll see a little drainage area. There's that right there. That's where one of our detention ponds will be, along a water. It's not a creek, but it's the headwaters to the creek, and it's been determined that we have to treat it as waters of the state. But we have left some area to detain that, and we'll release it. Up in the middle near the top, yeah, right in there, there's an existing pond that's also a water of the state, which we will have to preserve. But next to that, we're going to put a detention pond. I try to do my drainage to follow what Mother Nature has put there, because that's the best way to do it, in my opinion. So we're going to do that, and then if you could go back to that other slide, Mike, I guess you're controlling. Thanks for doing that. I couldn't do it. In the big green area to the left, which is primarily step, in the upper right-hand corner of that green area, there'll be another detention pond, because that's where a lot of the water wants to leave and run towards Stewart's Creek Road. Now, a fourth spot where water runs off the property is to the bottom left, but we're not planning to do anything to treat that water, because that's just going to be a step field, and once a step sewage system is installed, it's going to be like a pasture, so there's no need to detain that. So basically, we'll have detention ponds scattered throughout. Our intent, and again, we're held by the subdivision regulations and the zoning ordinance to make sure we don't release it any quicker than what it's being released today. We'll also address stormwater quality, as we all have to do now. But if I'm available for questions at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, whenever that might be.
Start now. Any questions for Steve while he's up here? Stay close.
Well, sidewalks is more of a planning thing, but I believe in our pattern book we call for sidewalks.
Just to confirm what Mr. Steele was saying, yes, they are in the pattern book. It does say sidewalks on both sides of the street.
Other questions? Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff before we get to our public hearing? Rhonda?
Mr. Chairman, I have one question for Doug. The steep topography on this land that's labeled as natural area, if you excluded that and you really just considered buildable lots without a rezoning, how many lots are we talking about this area would yield?
They are proposing right around, I believe I heard Clyde say, around 66 acres or so for the houses. You could of course, they're getting about 160. If you took their layout and you added, 5,000 square foot to some of those lots, of course, they wouldn't get what they're getting right now. It'd probably be closer to somewhere around 125-ish. That's just kind of off the top of my head in that range. It's more of I know Clyde said that they're looking overall density was about 1 unit per acre, which what he said is accurate. But when you look at the land that they're actually developing versus the number of lots, it's closer to somewhere between 2.5 in that area.
I just always like to keep in mind what their current zoning allows them to do versus what it is they're requesting. So that was the reason I wanted to know.
In a perfect world, the RM allows for, again, 50,000 square foot lots, but you would be looking at roughly 3 units an acre. 2.9 is what the calculation actually equals out to. But that's, again, in a perfect world, which you're never going to get that. So what they are proposing is more than what you would normally see in an RM subdivision. But I don't think it's just a lot more than what you would normally get. So.
And one follow-up to that, Doug. On several of the pages in the site plan, it has that steep topography area labeled natural area, but when you get to the very last slide, it's labeled as Phase 4, which implies that it might at some point be developed.
Yeah, I don't think they have.
You think that's just mislabeled?
I don't think they have any intention. I mean, their plan, this is what they'd be bound by. But if you see, when you look at that map, actually, there are residential lots outlined in Phase 4. That's probably what they're referring to. They just outline that whole part of the property. But even if that whole thing's called Phase 4, if this were approved, this is what they'd be bound by, is that layout right there. So it wouldn't go any further than what it is.
They would probably plat that area with the 4th phase. I think that's what they mean.
Doug, before we get into our public hearing, so everyone will know exactly what we're dealing with, this property is being asked to be rezoned for PUD. Right. It's already zoned for residential development.
Yes, sir.
And the difference between RM and PUD, just kind of explain that to everyone before we get into this.
Yeah, the base zoning of the property is called RM, residential medium density. That basically what that means is if somebody wanted to develop this property primarily with, or exclusively I should say, with 15,000 square foot lots or greater, what they would need to do was submit a preliminary plan to our office for our review, and then eventually construction drawings, final plat. That would all be by right. They wouldn't have to come through a rezoning process, public hearings. They would have to be considered at public meetings, of course, but they wouldn't have to have a public hearing like we're having tonight. The reason they're asking for the planned development is because a number of the lots, about 100 of the lots that they're asking for, are less than the 15,000 square feet. They're asking for those 10,000 square foot lots. Those require the planned development approach. We don't have anything, we do have a multifamily zone, but we don't have a whole lot of that in the county. So generally, whenever you see a development of less than 15,000 square feet lots, that comes as a planned development. Like I said earlier, the 15,000 square foot lots that they're proposing in the pattern book, they can do that today. There's nothing that we could do to stop them from just submitting a plat for our consideration that showed nothing but 15,000 square foot lots and above. The reason here today is because they're asking for some that are less than that. If this is approved, they are bound by this pattern book that we're looking at right now, plus any amendments that may result come as a result of this process that we're going through right now. So, like I spoke about in the last public hearing, if for some reason this was approved and the development team ended up changing and the development plans changed, and they decided, well, you know what, we want to go smaller than what we are showing in this plan, they would have to come back through this entire process that they're doing right now. So that's just a quick overview. I hope that answered your question.
The pattern book that you spoke of deals with the style and the quality of the materials, type of materials on the home.
That's correct.
And medium residential development would not.
That's correct. What they're proposing in here, again, based on the pattern book, is pretty much an all masonry product. That's not something in the RM zone that we can require of any developer that comes in. It could be a mixture of materials. It could be all vinyl siding. Not that I've got a problem. I live in an all vinyl sided home. I don't have a problem with that, but I'm just saying we don't have the ability in an RM type district to regulate that, but we do have the ability to hold them to what they are proposing in their pattern book as part of the zoning change.
Very good. At this point, I'll declare the public hearing open for REZ 21-008, Dan Bobo for Old South Properties. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Caleb Paul. I'm a licensed civil engineer in land development. My wife and I live off of Burnt Knob Road, and I'm a frequent user of Stewart's Creek Road, both now and in my childhood growing up nearby. I'm here to express my concerns regarding the Brewer Farms PUD as currently proposed. First, Stewart's Creek Road retains the ultra-rural characteristics of a farm road. There are sharp turns with poor visibility, narrow travel lanes, and absolutely no shoulders. While the developer plans to realign one sharp curve, there are several more in both directions which are ostensibly not being improved. Stewart's Creek Road is not on the county's thoroughfare improvement plan, and therefore my assumption is that there are no plans to pursue major improvements soon. I understand that the developer in this case can only be required to make streetscape improvements along their frontage. When the remaining roadway is as inadequate as Stewart's Creek Road is, this leaves much to be desired. Furthermore, new residents traveling to Smyrna or Nashville from this new development must pass through existing neighborhoods to the north, as this area lacks a direct path to the interstate. Specifically, this development will generate new peak hour trips through stop-controlled intersections at Pleasant Run Road, at 1 Mile Lane, and at 1 Mile Lane and Peebles Drive. These intersections have already been strained by new residential developments along 1 Mile Lane, which were built without meaningful improvements to the traffic infrastructure. I understand that the county is currently working on an updated comprehensive plan and thoroughfare plan. I respectfully request that this commission defer or deny this PUD application until such time as the surrounding roadway infrastructure can be better studied and Stewart's Creek Road be added to the plan for improvement. This would, at a minimum, give the county a vehicle to obtain the required right-of-way as the area develops. If the county can establish no plans to improve the existing road, then the proposed development seems premature to me. I would be remiss to not mention that my wife and I have lived until last year in an Old South cottage home community, a product which comprises the bulk of this proposed development. While this type and size of home plays a critical role in our development ecosystem in Rutherford County, their newness, size, and price point tends to attract rental companies as secondary and tertiary owners once the new home buyers move out. We observed over the last few years that our old HOA could not even reach a quorum of owner-occupants to vote on changes to the bylaws, among other issues of which I'm sure you're aware. I strongly encourage this commission to investigate and employ whatever means available to it through the PUD process to prevent the future dilution of the homeowner base, both in this plan and in similar ones through the county. In sum, I believe this development to be unwise at the present time, given the inadequate condition of the surrounding roadway infrastructure and the current lack of a plan to make the necessary improvements. Furthermore, the cottage product gives the neighbors legitimate reasons for concern. I respectfully encourage that this commission take whatever means in its power to ensure that any development on Stewart's Creek Road is a net positive to everyone, or defer it until such time as it can be done safely and well. Thank you.
He kind of stole my thunder a little bit. I have a lot of stuff on my sheet to talk about, so I'm not going to bore you guys by repeating that. What I did want to talk about that was addressed by Clyde, I think his name is, said that there was 1 unit per 1 acre. That's actually not true if you do the math. As you were talking about, there's a lot of unusable built space that's on that other side of this property. And so when you get down to the math of it, I did the math, there's 160 acres that's being considered tonight. In the developer's own submission, they say that those 66 acres can't be developed because of the steep terrain. They submitted that 24 acres was going to be the step-down system. Then if you account for the streets and the ponds and the other common areas that they mention, they're going to have less than 70 acres where they're going to put 160 homes. They're putting these homes in areas that are significantly different. Our neighborhood, just as a matter of reference, the Hackney Meadows neighborhood where I live has 30 acres with 25 homes on it. Pembroke Farms has 82 homes on 66 acres. Stewart's Bend has 50 acres with only 42 homes on it. I could list the neighborhoods all around this area, but this development does not make sense for our area. There are too many homes on too little area. We're really worried about the streets and the traffic. The site plan that you guys put up just a second ago talks about one of the entrances is in the curve of Stewart's Creek Road. And if any of you have ever driven, as I do twice daily on Stewart's Creek Road, there are 3 90-degree turns that flank this neighborhood. One of the turns is an entrance that they're proposing. So now people are going to enter that turn and also enter this neighborhood. They're only going to soften one of the 90-degree turns. What about the other 2 that flank this neighborhood? That's a concern. There are no shoulders on this road, as this gentleman mentioned, and there's already a lot of traffic. My kids learned to ride their bikes on Stewart's Creek Road. We can't get on Stewart's Creek Road anymore. It's too crowded. So I just want to talk about the density. We're really, as neighbors in Hackney Meadows and our adjacent neighborhoods, we're really, really worried about the density of this neighborhood because it's not 1 home per 1 acre. It's 160 homes on 70 acres. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, I'm here to back everybody up for what the 2 have already said before. I came in with a signed petition from over 200 people in the vicinity that completely oppose, that do not want this at all. We understand that growth is inevitable, but Stewart's Creek Road, I'm on Stewart's Bend, that curve, I'm between 2 of those 90-degree curves, and that has become a drag race down that road. We can't ride our bikes, we can't walk. 25 years ago, when my kids were small, it was nothing for me to walk my Stewart's Bend and on Stewart's Creek. I wouldn't even think about it now. It's too dangerous. I walk up in the new subdivision in Pembroke, but those are bigger lots, they're bigger houses. This subdivision is going to be crammed. I'm thrilled that we're going to have green space, that they're going to have green space. But that's for their neighborhood. Our neighborhood's not going to get to enjoy that green space. So I ask that, you decline all this and just not allow it.
I'd just like to speak quickly on some of the points that have been mentioned. My name is Chris Glover. I live on 2533 Stewart Creek Road, so I would immediately be looking out my front door at part of this property. As was already mentioned, Stewart's Creek is a 2-lane farm road. It was never intended to have a high volume of traffic going in and out of there on a daily basis. They're going to soften one curve as the development. If you go towards Burnt Knob, there are 3 blind 90-degree turns. If you go towards Pleasant Run, there's 2 more blind 90-degree turns. You cannot go around that curve with a school bus there. You must stop in the road. You can't get away from that. That's not going to change that traffic pattern. It's going to change that road in any way. A school bus, rock truck, tractor trailer, you have to stop. If they're coming through the 2 of them, you have to stop and wait for them to come through both of them. There's no way you can get around that road when those vehicles are on that road. It was never intended to carry those types of vehicles. Almost all of this new traffic is going to be funneled down Pleasant Run and eventually onto Almaville Road into the I-24 interchange. So I can understand we could do a traffic study and we could put a turning lane in front of the subdivision on Stewart's Creek Road. We're not driving up and down Stewart's Creek Road. We're driving somewhere else. All of this traffic is funneling into somewhere else. Try to turn out from Pleasant Run onto 1 Mile Lane at 7:30 in the morning. It's 7:45 in the morning to go to school. You can't get through there. Try getting down to I-24 at 4 o'clock in the afternoon after the high school is left out. We can't say that we're going to add 200 to 300 cars every morning and every afternoon and say, well, we did a traffic study, we've got a turning lane. That has nothing to do with the traffic in this area that is exceptionally overcrowded. We're concerned every day when we send our kids off to school or at MTSU that they don't meet a rock truck on one of these curves, that they don't meet a tractor trailer with drivers that are not familiar with these roads that are flying up and down the construction vehicles nonstop every day. The people that are driving and going into these areas don't live here. They don't know what these roads are like. They come flying around these roads and run cars off the road all the time because they often end up coming through the front part of my property. The homes in this development are not aesthetically appropriate for the community. There's nothing else in the area built where you have home after home after home stacked on top of each other. There's no need for that. There's no desire from that within the community. There's no one in the community who wanted to start 100 starter-type homes directly across the street in this neighborhood. And we say that they're here because they're asking to go to 10,000 square foot lots. They want the majority of them to be 10,000 square foot lots. They're not asking for a few. They're asking for the majority of the subdivision to be built on lots that they're not entitled to, the 15,000 square foot lots. Okay, so if they want to make all the houses on 15,000 square foot lots and we go on, there's not a lot we can do about that. But to be coming in and asking to make the majority of them on smaller lots when the majority of all the surrounding homes are on larger lots, I don't see how anyone could support something like that. There's nothing reflective of Stewart Creek's Farms, Stewart Springs, Travis Estates, Pembroke Farms. None of the recent developments in the area are reflected in this development. The smaller homes being built on tiny lots will not stand the test of time like the homes have on Hackney Meadows, Stewart's Bend, or Pleasant Run. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Diane Brewer, and I live at 2401 Stewart's Creek Road. And the farm is part of my family, which is distant cousins, but I don't think that it needs to be there in our subdivision, in our area. I've lived over on Stewart's Creek over 25 years. And the schools that we have are wonderful schools. They're all going to be overcrowded now because of this new subdivision going in. The roads, like they said earlier, this gentleman did an excellent job on that. My house, from one place to the other, is like a drag race too, just like Rhonda said. If you can defer anything, doing that to this rural countryside is not helping things. I know things are going to, it's inevitable things are going to change, but if you could just not do that right now, it would just be wonderful because it's just not good.
Hi, everybody. My name is Patricia Spitzler. I live on the corner of Altoga Court and Stewart's Creek. I moved here from Long Island, New York, back in 2002. I moved here for a way of life that I thought was going to be simpler. So the way I feel about what's going on right now is I appreciate the beautiful homes that have gone in so far, but I feel like there has not been enough planning involved to make it feasible for us to have any kind of way of life right now. The schools are not equipped to deal with a glut of children. The road that we live on, I've lost several animals, several pets on that road. I don't let my animals out anymore. I live right on the corner of Stewart's Creek and Altoga Court, and I have always thought that this was going to be a safe place to live, but at this point I don't know if it is. So unless Rutherford County can come up with a better plan for us to protect our children and our pets from the drag races that go on Stewart's Creek, I don't think they're equipped to deal with more residents in our area. So I hope that we can come to some kind of agreement that our way of life is more important than the money that developers are making to put as many homes in as small a space as possible. It's very disturbing to me that this has become our way of life, to try to adjust to the glut of people that are coming into our area. We're encouraging more and more people to come in, and we're not making an infrastructure that can accommodate them. So if we could just slow down a little bit and make life a little bit better for the people that already live here, instead of just allowing this glut of people to come in. And, you know, I understand that we want our house values to be better, and, you know, we want our way of life to be better, but you can't have both in some cases. You know, you can't have a great education system if we don't make accommodations for the number of children coming in. I have a 16-year-old at Stewart's Creek High School, and I'm very concerned about the number of teachers that are able to deal. I was a substitute teacher in Rutherford County for the last few years, and we don't have enough teachers to accommodate all of these children coming in. So why are we just indiscriminately allowing people to build because it's better for their pockets than it is for the people that live here? We absolutely have to slow down. It is a country road. Stewart's Creek Road is a country road, and we are not accommodating the people that already live there. I know the people that are selling the property over there. I do. I know them personally. How much money do you need and to sell all of that property to developers and not accommodate any way of life? To me, it's unconscionable that we're just letting people build indiscriminately and do whatever they want to do. So my feeling is, let's slow down a little bit and make sure we're able to accommodate all the children in Rutherford County schools, and we're able to accommodate all the cars on Stewart's Creek Road. You know, I mean, the traffic and the drag racing and all that nonsense that goes on Stewart's Creek Road, we have to address that first. So that's all I have to say. I'm sorry.
Anyone else? Commissioner Gurley.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything tonight, but I feel I have to. My name is Joe Gurley. I am County Commissioner for District 9. The last speaker talked about New York. I just took my daughter up there last June, the end of June. We got there 2 days before they shut the place down to work at Mount Sinai Hospital. She's been up there a year. She's going to be there another year. I don't know what she sees there, but she's doing her thing and helping people. I want to put things in a little bit of perspective. I'm 74 years old. I'm retired, finally. Where Stewart's Creek Schools are was my family farm. We didn't have much choice about selling it due to the estate tax situation in 2004, but we did have a choice as to whether we sold it to the county or sold it to a developer who was going to put about 600 homes on that 300 and something acres, or 200 and something acres. We chose the schools because both my parents had taught school. I don't think that's a choice that we regret. It's now all public property. It has a park that many people in the neighborhood enjoy. It has a fire station. It has 3 good schools. Something is drawing people to Rutherford County. I don't know what it is. There's no antidote for it apparently right now. When I was growing up as a teenager, my nearest neighbors were 1/2 mile in any direction. On Sunday afternoon, we drag raced on Almaville Road. Yes, we drag raced on Almaville Road because there was no traffic on Almaville Road on that straight stretch. Believe it or not. I've walked from what's Smyrna Middle School now, which was my high school, where I graduated from, to my house 5 miles away. Never saw a car. Because if a car had passed me, they would have known me and picked me up and brought me out to the end of Morton Lane and dropped me off. In 1978, the farm adjoining us, the Beatty Farm, sold. It sold into 5-acre tracts. A few years later, what was Snooks Lee's farm, who the Gossets bought, sold and became Rocky Fork Estates. Now, the other neighbor in the other direction was the Gambles. All that property is Amberton or whatever's being developed on the backside of Amberton. The property up on the hill, we talk about steep terrain, those houses are 10 feet apart, 5-foot setback. That's what Smyrna's approving. There's somewhere around 2,000 houses platted within 1.5 miles of my house that's already approved. That's what's filling up Stewart's Creek Schools. I hate to see, so that property now of what was Benny Smith's property is now Ryan Development. Gambles, all of that's being resold off. Development comes. That's been over the last 40, 50 years, a little less, something like that. I don't care for development, but it happens. Like I said, I wished I knew there was an antidote to slow down the growth. I can understand after spending a week with my daughter last summer why people would leave New York or some other states. I lived in Akron, Ohio for 2 years when I first got married because you couldn't find a job here. Graduated from MTSU, had to move 500 miles north to find a job. I think what people need to understand, and I don't have all the answers, and I haven't made up my mind on this I came tonight to listen, and I've listened. And I have a good memory, so I'll remember everything that's said tonight. But by right, I'm seeing it around me. The Tucker Farm at the end of Morton, the hill's cut down. That's Blakeney now. I never thought that hillside would go either, but it has. Never thought what I call Rattlesnake Knob, where Benny Smith owned and a couple of others then owned it along down the road, would ever have houses, but it's Orion's development, Cedar Hill. So it's happening. If it ever gets annexed into Smyrna, it'll be a lot denser than what the county's even allowing. There's some things I don't particularly care for with this, but I do think the developer has made some effort to mitigate some of the issues. By right, I did the math, and probably you say, well, that's too steep to develop. No, it's not too steep to develop. They've chosen not to pay the cost of doing that, but if they were willing, there are developers that are paying that cost and developing right within a mile of my house or less. Well, Cedar Hill is a half mile from my house. It adjoins what was our property, where Cedar Stone Park is. So that could support 320 houses, something like that, the best I figured. At least around 300 houses. If someone chose to develop it, just RM. So it's a lot. It could potentially be worse than what's being proposed. I don't have a vote tonight. I get a vote in August, and like I said, I haven't made up my mind yet. I'm going to digest all this. But I did want to put things into perspective. Every time when those 30 or 40 people moved onto the Beatty farm, that was an intrusion to me. You know, all the farms around. Somebody mentioned Hackney Estates. Love Hackney and his wife. Went to church with them for 15 years. A bunch of Mr. Hackney, his brother, drove my school bus. We used to go around that road. It's the same old road, and I don't have the answer to that either. But unless we significantly increase taxes, the state does not give the county any money to build roads. If we're going to widen the road, we're going to have to appropriate the funds out of your property taxes. That's where it's going to come. I get questions from people who have come in from here, from California. Why can't we provide you this? I can provide you this at about a $6 per 100 tax rate, but not at $2 a 100. And so those are the things that, you know, I just want to lay it out in perspective. Things have changed for me. I don't know, in some ways for the better. Healthcare is better in some ways, but the doctors don't come to your house anymore. You know, but yes, things are always going to change. So just keep that in mind, and like I said, I haven't decided how I'll vote come mid-August, but that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gurley, for keeping your comments at under 3 minutes. Good job. Anyone else wishing to speak? See this lady coming up. Let me just throw out a couple of stats to you guys. Right now, our growth rate, and it has come on up, our growth rate has been 200 people a week a little more than 200 people a week. That's 800 people a month, or a little over 10,000 people a year. They're coming. I've lived in Rutherford County 73 years, my entire life. I grew up in Laverne. I went to the school system in Smyrna. Rutherford County does not resemble what it looked like back in the 1960s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Rutherford County will not look like in 30 years what it looks like now when we have close to 800,000 people. Let me just reiterate what this chairman was trying to explain with the help of our staff is that this property is zoned for residential development. It's going in there. What do you want? An unplanned residential development or a planned residential development? That is the decision that this commission will have to make tonight, okay? It's already zoned. There's no stopping that residential development. Let me repeat that. There is no stopping. What do you want? And I think you ought to lean on Commissioner Gurley to tell him what you want, because he'll make the recommendation before the full county commission on the 12th of August. So, residential development unplanned or planned residential development. That's a decision that this body will be making tonight, and the recommendation that we'll make before the full county commission. I'm sorry for the sermon. You're on.
And I guess our conundrum here tonight is that we all know that we're going to have a flood of residents in our neighborhood, but we just have to make sure that we have adequate space between them. We cannot allow developers to come in when you have limited access into this road. You only have Burnt Knob at Stewart Creek on one end, and you have at the other end is Baker Road. And as everybody knows, there is no shoulder anywhere on that road. There is, I'm a walker, and so unfortunately, my lifestyle has had to change because I can no longer walk in the mornings while everybody's trying to come through to get to work. Already, even with the construction of the existing neighborhood. So the problem is that we've got a beautiful country road here. There's not enough access to get all of these houses in here. And I understand we're trying to limit to the 15,000 square foot, and now we've got a whole group of 10,000 square foot that now we're going to be playing for, which is a whole lot more than I would ever like to see in this neighborhood because it's not consistent with what we have already. So number one, you do not have the road structure. You've got 5 dangerous 90-degree curves, and you're going to put an entrance in one of those after you slightly adjust for it. How many deaths are we going to have here? Because that is what is going to happen. If you do not have the roads in place, if you do not put the shoulders in and allow the bicyclists that come through there, the walkers that come through there that have done this for years, people are going to get hurt unless there is some planning done in order to make that accommodation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Doug and for Mike. Do we know on the traffic study how many intersections away from this area were included in that? Like, what was the scope of that?
I do not recall off the top of my head, but they always do their entrances, and then we try to get them to an arterial on either end. But we thought that maybe all the way to Pleasant Run Baker was a little far. That's why we kind of asked them to look at each road nearby. The North Road 90-degree curve right here. We asked them to look at, remember if they went all the way to this intersection at the Pembroke as well. But all right, calm down. We did ask them to look at several curves along here. My thought was to not configure that road like they have it, having it come off at this angle. My thought was to make this a three-way stop, a stop conditions in all ways, and then have it come straight south or come this way to the west, or most likely to the south. So that was my thought, to kind of make that a three-way stop to slow the flow of traffic down. They chose not to do that and chose to kind of design it this way, the way they've proposed it tonight. We did ask them to make some improvements at this awkward intersection here. At North Road, where there's two 90-degree turns right there, and they are proposing to kind of improve that with some signage and stop signs, chevrons and around the corners. Why don't you come up and talk to us if you'd like?
Well, I can tell you right there in that curve. Okay, so if you go look at that curve around East North Creek, right there, they've put up signage. They put up signage several years ago because the farmer, Brewer, was tired of replacing his fence posts from people every Friday night or Saturday night running off of the road into his field. So they finally put signage up. We still have to help people out on several occasions, still going around that curve, even with the signage. This other side where it goes Stewart Creek at the corner of East North Creek, we've had 2 dump trucks fall off the edge, okay, because there is no side of the road there. And you're looking at a good 4-foot ditch to where, as a walker, if I had to escape that road, I am going to hurt myself jumping into those ditches. So as you see there, as you have it right here, when that grass and the tree line grows up, you cannot see around there. As you see where that comes around that field right there, if you go look at that field, the fence line is gone, where people have not been able to make that curve. Those are some serious curves, people, with no visibility. The worst curve, if you go back to that subdivision, if you go back up toward the subdivision north, yep, to where that curve is, comes around to their green area.
Right here?
Yes. Because of the way that hill is, you can't see around that curve when you're driving. So that's what I'm saying. You've got 5 90-degree turns like this in this road. Each one of them are very difficult for even a normal car to drive. And now with the construction people coming in and out of Pembroke, we're finding I've actually stopped even when the trucks are coming around because they don't know how to stay in their own lane because the road's too narrow. So it is dangerous. Somebody's going to die on this road. You adding all of these higher density houses here without doing something. And I don't think any one of us want to have that. I know I don't. Because it's going to be one of my neighbors or myself.
Thank you. Mike, anything else?
No, I mean, a lot of it is a speed control. I mean, we can request the sheriff department do a speed study through here, maybe possibly lower the speed limit down, lower than what it is. But exactly. Okay.
The public hearing is closed. Mike, anything else?
No, sir.
Nick, let me put you on the spot. We're talking about a PUD, and if not a PUD, in all probability, an RM development, residential medium density development. Part of our job, part of our policy, to consider the road conditions as we consider what type of development goes on there. Is that outside of our scope, or is it inside of our scope as it relates to public safety?
Chairman, I think it's perfectly within the scope of your review of this and our regulations. Part of the determination is that there's adequate public facilities for the PUD. Now, what we construe that as is, of course, a policy decision of what is considered adequate here. I think you have to take a holistic view of the entirety of the development, and that is one component of it. Whatever the decision that is reached, you need to make sure that there's material evidence upon which to base it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I received calls both for and against this development. And a lot of times, we know this, the engineers know this because we're up here twice a month. Neighbors, they don't get to see this process until it affects them, until it's in their community. So the thing that they don't know is that with a planned unit development, there's a lot of advantages that they're offering here. The problem is, it's always difficult, our job, in trying to balance the property owner's rights with the rights of the neighbors. Because in every situation, everybody's a little bit right. The developer's right in that they're offering us all masonry products, which is a better quality product that's going to age better than anything that we've seen traditionally. The neighbors are right when they say the road system out here is completely inadequate to continue to add additional traffic. So that's our balance. That's the struggle that we face. So I called the road superintendent, Greg Brooks, and asked him about the quality of Stewart's Creek Road, any plans, any knowledge that he had about that road in particular, and would he drop 160 houses onto that road? His exact words were, "That road is horrible." He said that we have gone out there and we've paved it. We tried to widen it as best we could. We were working with very little right-of-way and no shoulder. So he didn't say anything that in my mind gave me confidence that that road network is ready for additional development. I don't want to discourage this developer from doing the kind of quality development that we've been asking developers to do. So as much as I hate that, I just feel like this particular space is currently inadequate to support what it is that they're wanting to do safely. So with that, I'll make a motion that we deny.
We have a motion to deny. No second. Motion fails.
Mr. Chairman, we go through this every week. We do. But these people don't understand it, and I know they don't. I know that I've got too many people on my road. I do, and I live in the country, and I'm way out. But it is what it is, and I'll have to agree with Mr. Gurley. This is the lesser of two evils. I know Old South will do a good job. I'll make a motion to approve it.
We have a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments. And a second. We have a motion and a second to approve item REZ 21-008, Dan Bobo for Old South Properties. Any other questions or any other comments?
Will you do a roll call vote, please?
Call the roll. Commissioner Allen has called for a roll call, so call the roll, please, Gal.
Charlotte P. Craig Lynch. David Jones. Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
No.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes. Motion carries. Once again, this will be presented with a positive recommendation before the full county commission on August the 12th. It'll be right here in this courtroom. Item 6.3, REZ 21-010, Joe Swanson Jr. for Swanson Developments. Location is 3912 Bradyville Pike. Commission district is 21. The county commissioner is Shanto Sereno. The size of the site is approximately 122 acres. The tax map is 111. The existing zoning is RM for residential medium density. Proposed zoning is a PUD, planned unit development for a residential subdivision. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Helps if I turn my mic on. This is the final application we have for tonight. The applicant's proposing to develop the property into a 96-lot residential single-family subdivision called the Fox Camp Retreat. There are two different products in this development. 72 of the units, you'll see that chart that I put in the staff comments to maybe help a little bit with that. 72 units are detached. Single-family structures, minimum 10,000 square feet, 80 feet at lot width, minimum lot size, or dwelling size, excuse me, is 1,600 square feet. The remaining 24, as you can see on the concept plan that is within your pattern books on your iPads, and I know Michael will bring that up at some point. Those are going to be kind of around the area where Bradyville Pike, closer to the road of Bradyville Pike. Minimum dwelling size there is 1,400 square feet. Minimum bedrooms for the detached units are 3 bedrooms versus 2 for the attached. Minimum 2-car side entry garage for the detached units, whereas the attached units have a minimum 1-car front entry garage. Street lighting is being provided along with sidewalks on one side of all public streets. Open space amenities will be discussed in a little more detail. I'll get to that here in just a minute. A portion of this development, as you can see on the concept plan, you kind of see that area that's kind of, it says property to remain under the current RM zoning. That's actually part of the subject property, but that's being excluded from the planned development. That's for future development at some point, nothing we need to consider tonight. There will be 2 entrances for this development onto Bradyville Pike. There is no direct access from the townhome or condominium lots, nor from the lots 32 through 34, which actually have frontage along Bradyville Pike. Their access will be from those 2 separate access points that you see on the concept plan. Dilton Way, which is right to the west of the subject development where Mike is highlighting right there, actually does cul-de-sac into this property. There was some discussion about possibly making a connection there, but after discussing it, staff didn't feel strongly that that connection needed to be made. I will say, and this particular sheet doesn't show it quite as well, but to the south, again, still part of the same property, there are a couple of streets that will have potential access points to the step soils area, either Singleton Drive or Lytle Creek Drive, which is on the eastern side of the property. I don't think that decision's really been made yet as far as which one, but that's only going to be for access to the step area. That's not going to be for access to the residential development. There won't be, cars going through there or anything. Just a step access area. The applicant did submit a traffic study with their proposals, which we did include the recommendations of that with your agenda packets. Turn lanes were not recommended as part of that particular traffic study. Buffering and landscaping is typically not required by the zoning ordinance between single-family developments. The applicant is proposing a type 1 buffer between the attached and detached products in the development, as well as an enhanced buffer along Bradyville Pike to screen the rear of the attached dwellings. Again, there is additional information in the pattern book, but this project will be dedicating over 75 acres, which is 65% of the property, to open space and wetland preservation. As you can see, there's a large area that Mike is highlighting there, really not area that's appropriate for development, so that's being completely set aside and will not be disturbed by any of the development. And of course, performance standards would not require to be met just because this is a residential development. Again, similar with the last development, these lots are larger than we've been seeing for typical PUD lots. Mr. Roundtree did make mention of the meeting that we had. Mr. Taylor, who's here with SEC, we've also spoken to him about this as well, and so they're hearing what we're saying about these developments. Mike's put up the architectural characteristics for the detached, and there's one for the attached units as well. With that, again, I know that they have a presentation they'd like to make, so I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff at this time?
Thank you, Chairman. Matt Taylor from SEC, 850 Middle Tennessee Boulevard here in Murfreesboro. I don't have a formal PowerPoint or anything. I think Doug did a good job walking through the details of the project. Think back over on starting at page 16, we give you some good examples of the homes. As Doug said, they all are side entry garages, which we have not seen a lot of lately. And then over on page 22, we give some examples of the townhomes, and very attractive on both sides there. And I think it's very well amenitized. I'll be happy to answer any questions now or after the hearing.
Questions?
Turn lanes.
So we did the traffic study, and after everything, it's still serviced, still had a level of service B, which is still extremely high, I think is why she did not recommend turn lanes inside that study. So
I think they will be needed with this amount of lots.
So, well, I mean, yeah, and her study took into account both the growth in the area as well as the number of lots we proposed there.
The public hearing will be open in just a minute, and you can come up.
So I can't go into that. We did host a neighborhood meeting. We gave a summary inside of our response back to Doug. Doug attended and was able to hear that. Basically, the bulk of the conversation at the neighborhood meeting was about drainage. And so we've reached out and we provided a preliminary stormwater analysis and summary to Mr. Hughes, and we think that there are some good opportunities to help the drainage in the area. One of those is the property directly to the east. We are going to extend over a pipe that's lower. I think that gentleman's name is Mr. Keats. I could be saying that wrong. And allow his front yard to drain better than it does today. We've also reached out to TDOT through Greg Brooks's office to talk about an opportunity to install a pipe underneath Bradeville Pike to try and reduce the flooding that occurs directly in front of this property or to the east of it. And so TDOT was very receptive to that. If we could get a infrastructure system to them, which we can through ditches and our detention ponds, then they would come install a pipe underneath Bradeville Pike. So very excited about both of those. And then our detention system, we think will help everything in the area. We heard a lot of complaints coming out of Dilton Way and all that water, and so we'll be accepting that and continue it on downstream. So we think we're very confident in our stormwater concept and design will actually help the area. We're impacting the 100-year floodplain very little. We've purposely tried to keep most of our lots outside of the floodplain to eliminate the required fill for that area.
Any questions for the applicant? Helen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, it's always been important to me that we try to preserve the rural character of these roads, especially like Bradyville, Manchester, those different ones. And I know you've identified that you're going to do like an enhanced landscaping strip behind those townhomes. Are you going to do anything specific to try to preserve just the appearance and the quality of that road as it currently exists, or are you going to need to take those trees down to put that landscaping in? And I don't know how much that ties back into your stormwater issues.
I think we would like to keep as many trees along our frontage as possible. It makes our lots more valuable. Obviously, we will have some grading. One good thing with the lots being a little larger, like for lots 32 through 34 that back up to Bradeville Pike, with those being larger, typically you don't have to do as much grading. You would not grade and touch the entire lot. And so that would hopefully allow us to keep more of the vegetation through there. I think that there's a portion of this property that along the road that I'll say it's a scattering, whether it's treed or not. And I think some of that has to do with some of the overhead power lines that run through there. Some of those come pretty far up into the property, so those will be relocated to be more parallel with Bradeville. And I'm sure Middle Tennessee Electric would require anything inside their right-of-way to be cut so they could maintain in the future. But we want to maintain as many existing trees as we possibly can.
Other questions for the applicant at this time? Stay close. Mike, any comments?
No, Matt's correct. They have done a preliminary drainage evaluation. There is an area at, I think, the northeast corner of Bradeville Pike that does overtop on heavy rain events, and I think you can probably see it in this aerial image from 2020. A lot of water standing in this area. The dark shading is where water has come up over the road or close to coming over the top of the road. So what they're going to be working on is adding in drainage culverts to allow the water to flow underneath the road instead of over the top. They're also going to, like Matt said, they're going to have 3 detention ponds. Our maps seem to be locking up again. They're going to have 3 ponds. This is the area that he was talking about. Mr. Kite has had a lot of issues with drainage problems. This is his septic system in the front yard. It is essentially in a bowl and doesn't drain anywhere. So heavy rain events, he's got water standing in this area, and I think it even crosses his driveway. But his house is built on high ground, and it's usually protected. I haven't heard of any water getting into his house, but what they're going to propose to do is have 3 interlinked ponds. They're going to, even though this area is going to be preserved for wetlands, I believe they're going to try to excavate some depth coming out here to allow this drainage to help flow out in this westerly direction going towards Lytle Creek, and then also help, if they can, help this adjacent property here. But this area is extremely flat. This area right now is showing 100-year floodplain. FEMA has recently reevaluated that area, and I believe a lot of that's going to be removed, but it won't change the fact that it'll still stay a wetland, so it won't be developed. But traffic, their study did say, even with the anticipated growth, they assumed an additional 20% in the morning of additional growth and 30% in the afternoons over their timeline to offset the loss of counts during the pandemic and likewise. So they've buffered their numbers up, but they still have level of service B for these at the existing Bradyville Pike at these entrances. So they're not recommending improvements right now.
Say that again, no turning lanes?
No turn lanes, I believe, is what they're proposing at this time. They will have, plan. Matt, were you going to have a dedicated right out and left out? Don't recall remembering what that was proposed at those entrances.
I don't think that we'd gotten quite that granular, but I mean, just basically all of our entrances into our developments have, I think, a dedicated left and right out, and then an in. So.
But because of the wetlands and the property to the east has already been carved up in 5-acre tracts, they did not extend stub streets to that direction or to the south.
Mike, you mentioned there were proposed or suggested drainage that runs back toward the wetlands. Mm-hmm. Are they shown on the plans? And if they're not,
they are not shown on the plans. It's just what was discussed in the preliminary drainage evaluation and what the design engineers have relayed to me.
So how do we make a decision tonight when we don't know if they're going to be in place or not? My question is, if we approve this contingent upon all of those things being in place that you discussed, would that be an appropriate motion, Doug? Okay.
I think it would be. Some of the things that they're talking about, and Mike can correct me, obviously, because I may be kind of getting on my lane just a little bit here. I mean, a lot of the things that they're talking about, you're talking a more detailed drainage design, which you typically don't see at this stage. Right. So, as long as the preliminary concept is sound, I mean, we can work out the details when it comes to the preliminary plan and the construction drawings and all that.
So without doing a full-blown design, we can't really tell. I mean, it is a challenging area because of the flatness of the land and because the land is so flat, the soil has become hydric in this area and become a wetland soil. So without seeing, actual field run topo and the designs of this, it's a good concept, a good theory, but we have to see the actual designs.
If I may, we had submitted a written document with our conceptual stormwater design. We'd be just fine having that integrated as part of the PUD, just as an appendices or something in the back, if you would, Chairman, and then that would hold us to how we fulfill our drainage obligations at a construction plan phase.
It's on the screen here where they did a preliminary evaluation of the property and the surrounding properties.
Staff is pretty much satisfied with this?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for staff or the applicant at this time? We're ready for our public hearing. This time I'll declare the public hearing open for REZ 21-010, Joe Swanson Jr. for Swanson Developments. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Jason Basinger. I live at 1730 Lytle Court. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the commissioners, to let me speak today. Mr. DeMosi, do you have those pictures?
Okay.
He emailed some pictures to Mr. DeMosi. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? DeMosi. This is pictures showing, I live at 1730 at the southern end of this development, where I drew some arrows on this map here to show the drain water, or the storm water that floods our property every heavy rain. Rain floods from Lytle Court into our yard, in our crawl space, floods our backyard. It comes in from our neighbor's yard into our crawl space, floods our backyard. The pooling of water behind our house.
I'll be there in a second. Keep talking.
The pooling of the water is a very big nuisance. It lasts for about a week, and our yard is saturated for about a week after that. Plus all the storm debris in our yard that we have to clean up every single time. That part is a nuisance, but the part that is affecting our house is the water, the storm water that is flowing through our front yard, through our landscaping, into our crawl space. I've had to do thousands of dollars of work, try to divert this water, sump pumps in the crawl space. Our foundation is cracked in 4 different spots. That has to be repaired. And this is showing our front sidewalk. This is the Lytle Court. The rain floods right off the street into our front yard, around our house, through the driveway. This is our driveway here to the other side of our house, and it connects to the back. This is our landscaping every time it rains. In 2008, when we moved in, this wasn't really a problem, but the land has eroded greatly. And now there's no ditch in front of our house, which I've taken measures, and I've started digging a ditch myself. We contacted Public Works. This is our backyard. This is typical for our backyard. I've got my sump pump draining out here. We contacted Public. This is sump pump in action, just trying to pump water out. Contacted Public Works Department last year on a solution to this. They said they contacted the landowner of this development beside our house, and the landowner will not give her permission to dig a ditch to let the drain water flow into their property. Now, after listening to Mr. DeMosi and Mr. Hughes talk and the developer talk, the person on Bradeville Pike that has a little bit of water in the front yard, they're allowed a drain pipe to drain that water out into the development. I've seen that house a million times. I've been there for 13 years, and a little bit of water in the front yard is a little price to pay compared to our crawl space flooding every single time there's a heavy rain. And I would be very happy, my family would be very happy for a ditch to be allowed to be dug into this property that is flowing into a wetlands. So it seemed like, to me, it would help the wetlands grow. And if there's, and the plan right now for the drainage to come south from the PUD, I'm afraid that water's going to keep coming into my property. And you see the tree line there, my house is there, that number 33. That tree line, stormwater runs down that fence line, and that flood we had earlier this year was coming into my backyard. So that land has eroded away in the past 13 years. At the time it was built, and maybe it would be sufficient, but now it's all eroded away and it's almost flat. So my concern is that the development and the stormwater from that development headed to the wetlands is going to deteriorate the ground even more and erode it and damage to our house to where we cannot live in the house. And I would like, after hearing the plans of the drain pipe for that individual's property, I would like the plans to be deferred until a ditch or a drain pipe is allowed to be put in for my property into the wetlands area. That's all I have to say. Thank you for showing those pictures for me.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello everyone, my name is Ron Gertz. I live on 140 Cool Springs Drive. The area that they're doing a lot of this work on is wetlands. Lido Creek is there. It doesn't take but a moderate rain to flood the area. Out on the Bradyville Pike, on the Dilton Mankin, at times it has to be blocked off and traffic diverted because it gets so deep, even across Bradyville Pike. So I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I know that land is flat, really flat. And I don't know that what they're proposing from a drainage point of view would be adequate for even the moderate rains, let alone the heavy rains that we get. And this year we've had quite a bit of rain. So it has flooded out there many times. So I would ask that this be deferred until a really heavy rain study could be done as to where that drainage could go. Like I said, that is a wetlands down there. You got Lido Creek down there. So it'd be a shame to see a subdivision go in there and get flooded out, is what I'm saying. So thank you for the time.
Good evening. My name is Burma Gay Kite, and I'm the lady that lives at 4208 Bradyville Pipe. I'm the one that has the little small puddle of water in the front yard, which is actually 4 feet. So if you call that a small puddle of water, then hooray for you, okay? We met with the developers, and it was a really good meeting. It was one of the best meetings I've ever attended with development. And development is going to happen because guess what? As we live through life, more and more people is going to move to our county and to our cities, and we want that. We want to grow. We don't want to stay stagnated. And I always welcome growth, but I do have some concerns that was not answered at that meeting that we went to. All the subdivisions that I've seen in Rutherford County have these, I guess, berms or ditches between each of the subdivisions. I did not see that in the plan. I'd like to see that in the plan that's coming because I know development's going to happen and growth is going to happen, but I just want it to happen so that I don't get flooded any more than what I've been flooded. I've been fortunate enough, my husband and I have spent over $50,000 having dirt hauled in to put into our yard to keep the flood water out from underneath our house. And we're both retired military, and we worked 2 jobs for 2 years, each one of us did. For 30 years, each one of us did to save up for this property. And we've already spent a good amount of the money that we had saved just to keep the water out from underneath our house. But we would like to see in the plans that there be a berm or ditch between our property and the new development. We would like to know, will that berm and that ditch provide drainage that will take water away from our property, because we can't take any more water. And I promise you, when we get 1 inch of water, we will have water in our yard. We have fish in our yard. I could literally put a boat out there in the front yard and in the backyard and go fishing. Will there be a run for the retention ponds? That water that's going to go into the retention ponds, it's going to fill up eventually, I promise you will, because to the back of me, there's been a new subdivision put back there. It's called Singleton Park. That subdivision built a retention pond that runs onto my neighbor's yard that runs into my yard. I get it from the back, from the Supercons. I get it from Delta Mankins. I get it from Brady Bell Pike because it runs over the state highway, and then I get it from what used to be called, which is now the Swanson property. So I'm like sitting on a moat. My house is on the moat, and I can't take any more water, or we can't take any more water. And then the property line, one of the things that was not addressed at the meeting that I guess because everybody was just real upset about development and about the wild animals, but anyway, was how far the houses was going to be from our property line. I think my husband made a comment that I feed the wild animals. Yes, I'd feed the wild animals, and I still have 6 acres to feed them on when they're not flooded. So I'm okay with that. But the water, I think you addressed that tonight, but it was not in the plans that the water that currently comes across 99 or Brady Bell Pike, and I promise you, I don't know how the state does it. I've asked the state to fix the highway. I showed them where the road falls in when it washes away. Down in the ditch that goes between me and the highway, there's road that gets washed out from underneath that highway. I'm surprised that the highway has not fallen in to this day. But if you're going to try to reroute that water from that's coming across over into your retention pond, the question is where that water all going to go? Is it going to go into Lila Creek? Because if it is, y'all going to have to put a pump in those retention ponds and pump it to Lila Creek, because that land is flat. And all that water comes to that one little hill right there that I'm sitting on. So there was 5 items that I'd like to see addressed, part of the plan, to make sure that it gets done before, and those are the berms, the ditches between the properties that would help, where the drainage is going to go. Is it going to be on my side, or is it going to be on the other side? How far the houses are going to be from my property, and that water that's coming across 99. And if anybody can get Rutherford County's road people to fix the drainage problem at the Dilton, Mankin, and Brady Bell Pike, good luck, because I've been trying for 3 years since I moved here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening, Joe Swanson, 1188 Park. Wanted to say a few comments because there may be some folks here that don't know about the Swansons here in town. We've been developing in Murfreesboro for 55 years, just about as long or a little bit longer, or just about as long as I've been in Murfreesboro. We develop residential and commercial industrial subdivisions. My daughters, who were here earlier, had to go get 5 or 6 of my grandchildren. They were going to be here, but they're both realtors with me. My son is a contractor, and my son-in-law is a contractor, and they will be the 2 contractors, if this is approved, that will be building in this subdivision. One of the first things that I identified, or Matt and I identified, was obviously that there were some water problems there. We got with the kites. We talked to them. I think that we can help them with their situation. We also through our preliminary discovery, we realized that there was an issue with water coming across Highway 99, and we got with TDOT. We have a plan there. It's got to be worked out, but I think that TDOT is very receptive to helping with the water issues that are out there. I don't believe that my office got a call. Of course, we've got our 896-0000 numbers all over town. Had I known, I do know that my hay cutter out there said that there was a ditch cut from one of the houses. It may have been your house. Had I known about that, we could do something to address it, but I'll let Matt talk more about that. Right now on the wetlands, I've met with TDEC 2 or 3 times out there, the Corps of Engineers. We have monitoring wells in place. We have to get data in order for TDEC to tell us that they approve the plan or disapprove the plan, or what we need to plan, or how much water we can allow into this area. The detention ponds that we plan on putting in there should enhance that area. We will put outfalls as we design this as regularly or as often as we can to help promote the growth of this wetland and this natural area. These are all things through my many developments. I can't tell you how many lots I've developed in Murfreesboro. But one of the things we try to do as a family is, how can we improve the area? How can we be good neighbors? Because it really, we want it to work for everybody, because it just makes life better that way. I appreciate your time, and if you have any questions for me, I'll be here, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello, my name is Deanna Nadeau. My property backs up to the wetlands, so I don't have the fear of these houses being next to me, thank goodness, because I've been told that the step system is going to be coming to me, or on my area. But what concerns me is when those ponds are pumped, how is that going to affect the wetlands? That's some of my concern, is whether it's going to cause me to flood. I don't flood right now because I am on a little higher lot. I'm just a couple of houses down from you, Mr. Basinger. I don't flood right now, thank goodness. But if the excess water from the main subdivision is pumped out into the wetlands, how is that going to affect me? How is that going to affect Lytle Creek Drive or Lytle Creek? This is something that we would like to have some answers to before you all approve this. I think growth is inevitable, especially out there in Bradyville Pike, because we are the last part of the county that's growing. I think most of the other sides of the county's grown quicker than us. But that is one of the main concerns I have, is how that overflow water from the pond's going to affect the wetlands and how it'll affect my area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners.
Matt Taylor from SEC. We heard a couple of things there. One, the most recent, Ms. Nadeau, I believe she's right there at the intersection of Lytle Court. And I did looked up on GIS. Looks like her lot is up around elevation 645. All of our ponds, some of our discharges that we reference inside of the summary, were down in the 628, 629. The ponds will be in the 630 range. And so she's got a 10, 12, 15 foot elevation buffer. So nothing that we do stormwater wise would affect her. the gentleman that lives at 1730 Lytle Creek. I made the same offer to him after he sat back down that I made at the neighborhood meeting, which I'm happy to come out and look at his lot individually and see. A quick look on the GIS appears that there's probably a closed contour trapping water at the back of his lot. And so, as Mr. Swanson said, we'll be happy to look at a possible ditch. That is our soils areas over there, so we have to be careful about how that ditch is cut and where it goes. But we're happy to try to help alleviate him, just like we have with our other neighbors, Mr. Kite. And then Ms. Kite, there will definitely be ditches on the back of our lots, between our homes and your house. It's just not part of what we show on the concept plan, but there will definitely be ditches there. As far as distance between the houses, I think our rear setback here will be at least 20 feet. And so I think in an RM, I believe the side setback is 12 and a half or 15. So this actually would put the houses further away from you than they could be today. The water from Bradyville Pike, I anticipate that to go into this ditch in the back of our homes, and then to be routed into our detention ponds and routed to the west into Lytle Creek. I think that answered everything that I heard there. If I missed something, I'm happy to try to address that.
Thank you. Pettis.
Mike, everything that was said here, do you think this is an answer to?
Yes, sir. It will be a challenge to do so. Like mentioned earlier, it is extremely flat. Working in the wetlands, they'll have to mitigate what area that they're working in. They'll have to preserve other areas. But FEMA has studied this area, and they are reducing the floodplain. I don't know why, because I think it's an elevation issue, drainage issue. It's kind of like spilling a little bit of water on a flat table. It doesn't sheet off, it just sits. So that's something we'll have to carefully look at. They'll be required to evaluate how the area drains right now, and anything that they propose will have to mimic what was happening before or improve it and not impact any of the neighbors around. So this will be one of those areas that we'll have to look at carefully. And if I can get my computer to work without locking up. Show you what I was talking about. This is changes since the last firm map. Cross your fingers and hope it works. Okay. The blue area is what they're removing from the floodplain. It's all in this wetlands area, so it's not going to impact the development one way or the other. But they've restudied Lytle Creek in these areas and think that this needs to be removed from the wetlands, from the floodplain. But being so flat, getting this to drain out is going to be a challenge. This, you can see where a farmer has dug a drainage swell through here, all the way from Dilton Mankin, all the way going in and tying into Lytle Creek. But I think when we have originally looked at Mr. Kite's property, trying to find a way out, it was 0.2%. I mean, it's almost as flat as a tabletop, or maybe flat as a tabletop. So that's something that's going to be tough to overcome, that flat elevation. But they think they can make the outfall of this pond, with a little work in this wetlands, gain some elevation to help it drain off and get it from Bradyville Pike through their development and then out this western edge. So in theory, they think it can work. We'll have to look at the construction plans to ensure that it will work.
That's what you'll be looking for at the site plan?
Yes, okay. Yes, sir.
So everything will be looked at once again through the site plan as well as the final plan, and
Sir,
You'll be on top of this, looking at it to make
Oh, yes, sir.
sure-
I enjoy bleeding all over Matt's plans with the red markups. So, yes, sir. That's one of my hobbies.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion to approve the applicant's request.
Subject to staff comments.
With staff's comments.
Thank you.
And their watchful eye.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Once again, we have a motion and a second to approve REC 21-010, Joe Swanson Jr. Other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Let me make one particular comment before you guys leave. You're not experiencing something that hundreds of other Rutherford County residents haven't experienced, and it's been the goal of this Planning Commission and county government to improve the handling and the flowing of water for the last 20 to 25 years. We're getting better at it. And let me also say that Joe Swanson, the Rutherford County resident, not only a developer, but a Rutherford County resident, and we've never known him to not do things that are in the long-term best interest of this county. Let me make a quick suggestion. The site plans will have to come back before this commission to be approved at some point, probably over the next couple of months. It'll be a Monday morning, 9 a.m. meeting, and I'm making a request that the developer bring those site plans at 8 o'clock into this courtroom and set them up out in the hall so that you guys can come and take a look at those site plans before they're presented to this commission. So, I'm sorry? We don't know that date, but it'll be, let me give you a couple of dates, okay?
Well, I can at least, while you're looking up some dates there, Mr. Chairman, I can just say, as far as, I mean, of course, this still has to work through the public hearing process. You know, this is just the recommending body right now. So next month at the August 12th meeting, there'll be another public hearing at 6 o'clock, starting the meeting, 6:30 for the public hearings in this room. After that, really, it's going to be up to the developer as far as when they move. Now, you can feel free to call our office to find out if a particular application has been submitted, a particular plan, because the first thing they'll do is submit a preliminary plan for our review. That will have to come back through the Planning Commission. But again, we don't know that date yet, because that's really going to be up to the developer when they and their engineer when they submit that. So it could be within the next 2-3 months, it could be 6 months down the road. We just don't know at this point. So, but feel free to call our office at any time to find out. Plus, our agendas are all on our website. So if you just want to go to our website, which is rutherfordcountytn.gov, and navigate over to the Planning and Engineering page, toward the bottom you'll see agendas, Planning Commission. Just click on that, and you'll see folders with all the different meeting dates, and you can just check to see what's coming up.
It's usually the fourth Monday of every month. Usually the fourth Monday of every month. And once again, this has to go before the County Commission, and it will go before the County Commission on the 12th of August with a positive recommendation. If it passes the County Commission, then it'll come back for site plan review for us. And that's when you guys can take a good look at the final plan and how the water will be handled, okay? And I'm asking the developer to make that presentation at 8 o'clock before that meeting that we'll have on whatever Monday morning at 9 o'clock. So we'll set that up, try to set it up out here in the hallway area so that you guys can take a look at it and ask your questions of the developer before it comes in here to us for consideration, okay? Is that okay with you guys, Joe?
Yep. And if I could add one more thing, even if whenever that plan does come in, you're more than welcome to come to our office to take a look at those plans. Even before that meeting date, our information in our office is public record, so you're more than welcome to come in and check those out.
That brings us to the end of our agenda. Doug, you have anything else?
I do not. Mike, do you have anything? No.
Our next meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. on the 26th of this month, and it will also be here in the courthouse. Thank you for your attendance. It was very beneficial. Your attendance was tonight, and we appreciate you being here and for all of your input. And with that, we are adjourned.